Module 11. The brain enables the mind seeing, hearing, smelling, feeling, remembering, thinking, speaking, dreaming, loving. Moreover, it is the brain that self-reflectively analyzes the brain. When we're thinking about our brain, we're thinking with our brain by firing across millions of synapses and releasing billions of neurotransmitters, molecules. Neuron scientists tell us that our mind is what the brain does. Brain behavior and cognition are integrated whole, but precisely where and how the mind's functions tied the brain. Let's see how scientists explore such questions. Tools of discovery. Having our head examined. How do neuroscientists study the brain's connections to behavior and mind? A century ago, scientists had no tools, high-powered yet gentle enough to explore the living human brain. The early case studies of patients by physicians and others helped localize some of the brain's functions. Damage to one side of the brain often caused numbness or paralysis on the body's opposite side, suggesting that the body's right side is wired to the brain's left side, and vice versa. Damage to the back of the brain disrupted vision, and to the left front part of the brain produced speech difficulties. Gradually, these early explorers were mapping the brain. Now, within a lifetime of new generation of neural cartographers is probing and mapping the known universe's most amazing organ. Scientists can selectively lesion destroy tiny clusters of brain cells, leaving surrounding tissue unharmed. The laboratory studies have revealed, for example, the damage to one area of the hypothalamus in a rat's brain reduces eating to the point of starvation, where damage in another area produces overeating. Today, the neuroscientists can electrically, chemically, or magnetically stimulate various parts of our brain and note the effect. Depending on the stimulated brain part, people may, to name a few examples, giggle, hear voices, turn their head, feel themselves falling, or have an out-of-body experience. Scientists can even snoop on messages of individual neurons with tips so small they can detect electrical pulse in a single neuron. Modern and microelectrodes can, for example, now detect exactly where the information goes in a cat's brain. When someone strokes its whiskers, researchers can also eavesdrop on chatter of billions of neurons and can see color representations of the brain's energy-consuming activity. Right now, your mental activity is emitting telltale electrical, metabolic, and magnetic signals that would enable neuroscientists to observe your brain at work. Electrical activity in your brain's billions of neurons sweeps in regular waves across its surface. An electroencephalogram, EEG, is amplified readout of such waves. Researchers record the brain waves through a shower cap, like hat. This is filled with electrodes covered with conductive gel. Studying with an EEG of the brain activity is like studying a car engine by listening to its hum. With no direct access to the brain, researchers present a stimulus repeatedly and have a computer filter out brain activity unrelated to the stimulus. What remains is an electrical wave evoked by the stimulus. You must look into people as well as at them, advised Lord Chesterfield in 1746 letter to his son. Unlike EEGs, newer neuroimaging techniques give us that Superman-like ability to see inside the living brain. For example, the CT computer technology tomographic scan examines the brain by taking X-ray photographs that can reveal brain damage. Even dramatic as PET, position emission tomography scan, on the next page, which depicts brain activity by showing each brain's area consumption of chemical fuel and sugar glucose, active neurons, and glucose hogs, and a person receives temporary radioactive glucose. The PET scan can track a gamma ray released by its food for thought. As a person performs a given task, rather like weather radar showing rain activity PET scan, hotspots which brain areas are most active. As a person does mathematical calculations, looks at images of faces or daydreams. An MRI, magnetic resonance imaging, brain scans the person's head is put strong magnetic field which aligns the spinning atoms of brain molecules. Then a radio wave pulse momentarily disorientates the atoms. When the atoms return to their normal spine, they emit signals that provide a detailed picture of soft tissues, including the brain. MRI scans have revealed a larger than average neural area in the left hemisphere of musicians who display perfect pitch. They also have revealed enlarged ventricles, fluid-filled brain areas. In some patients who have schizophrenia, it is a disabling psychological disorder. A special application of MRI, functional MRI, can reveal the brain's function as well as its structure. Where the brain is especially active, blood goes. By comparing MRI scans taken less than a second apart, researchers can watch specific brain areas activate, showing increased oxygen-laden blood flow. As a person who looks at the scene, for example, the fMRI machine detects blood rushing to the back of the brain, which processes visual information. Such snapshot of the brain changes activity are providing new insight, albeit sometimes overstated, into how the brain divides the labor. A mountain of recent fMRI studies suggest which brain areas are most active when people feel pain or rejection. Listen to angry voices, think about scary things, feel happy, or become sexually excited. The technology enables a very mental task. Neuroscientists were able with 80% accuracy to predict how those mental activities people were doing. Other studies have explored brain activity associated with religious experience through the settling the question whether the brain is producing or perceiving God. Today's techniques for peering into thinking, feeling brain are doing psychology what microscope did for biology, the telescope did for astronomy. From them we have learned more about the brain in the last 30 years than in the previous 3,000. To be learning the neurosciences now is like studying world geography while Megel was exploring the seas. It is truly a golden age of our brain science. Older brain structures. An animal's captivity comes from its brain structure. In primitive animals such as sharks, not so complex brain primarily regulates basic survival functions, breathing, resting, and feeding. In lower mammals such as rodents, a more complex brain enables motion and gather memory. In advanced mammals such as humans, a brain that processes more information enables increased foresight as well. This increasing complexity arises from new brain systems built on top of the old. Much as Earth's landscapes cover with the new. Digging down, one discovers the fossil remnants of the past, brain stems, components performing for us as much as for a distant ancestor. Let's start with the brain basement and work up to the newer systems. The brainstem. The brain's oldest innermost region is the brainstem. It begins with the spinal cord, swells slightly after entering the skull. This slight swelling is the medulla. Here lies the control for your heartbeat and breathing. As some brain damage patients or vegetative state illustrate, we need no higher brain or conscious mind to orchestrate our heart's pumping and lungs breathings. The brainstem handles those tasks. Just above the medulla sits the pons, which helps coordinate movements. If a cat's brainstem is severed from the rest of the brain, above it is the animal will still breathe and live, even run, climb, and groom. But cut off from the brain's higher regions won't purposely run or climb and get food. The brainstem is a crossover point where most nerves to and from each side of the brain connect with the body's opposite side. This peculiar cross-wiring is but one of the brain's many surprises. The thalamus. Sitting atop of the brainstem is the thalamus, a pair of egg-shaped structures that act as a brain's sensory control center. The thalamus receives information from all senses except smell and routes it to the higher brain regions that deal with seeing, hearing, tasting, and touching. The thalamus also receives some of the higher brain's replies, which then it directs to the medulla and to the cerebellum. Think of the thalamus as being the sensory information, what London is to England. Trains, a hub through which traffic passes en route to various destinations.